Hey guys, DMS here. Today I have for you the HE-5XX. Let's check it out. Now, real quick before I start this video, do me a favor, if you like audio, click the subscribe button down below. Helps make videos like these possible, and I want to keep bringing you guys videos about audio and headphones. Thanks. So, here they are. These are the HE-5XX. It's heavily implied that these are a successor or a modern revision of the Hifiman HE-500, which is a pretty legendary headphone, all things considered. A lot of people liked it. I owned one at one point. It was certainly a good headphone. There were things about the original HE-500 that I didn't like. I found it to be a little bit shouty and a little bit dark at times. I also didn't like the pad shape of the original HE-500. They were round pads and they clamped on my ears a little bit. Now, that headphone aside, this one does have some key differences. This has oval pads, which I actually like. It fits on my head. This is significantly lighter. I think they said they reduced the magnet size by about 30% or something like that. It's either the magnet size or the weight. Don't hold my word on it, but this is around 350 grams, which is significantly lighter than the original HE-500. Still has double-sided magnets. They are lighter than the original magnets. It does have one of those OG Hifiman headbands that a lot of people are used to. It does flop around a little bit. It doesn't feel like it's going to just break on me, but it is a very light construction. All black, decent looking headphone, pretty comfortable because it's so light. This does have some padding on it. I can feel the bar if I really push in there, but it's such a light headphone. The weight is so well distributed that I don't have comfort problems on this, and I'm usually a pretty picky person when it comes to comfort in headphones. It comes with a cable that is dual entry because it is dual 3.5mm. Stock cable absolutely sucks. I made a cable for it that, while it might not be the prettiest thing in the world, I really enjoy it. I like how it splits all the way down here at the connector. That's what I'm using with it. Now, this is a pretty easy to drive headphone, but it does benefit from beefier amplification in some cases. It certainly benefits from amplifiers that I think are more resolving. I'd like to bring up a few key comparisons here. The 560S, the 6XX, and the Hifiman Sundara, because this fits somewhere in there with all of them. Now, the 6XX is known for its incredible timbre, its warm sound, its vocal clarity, not having much soundstage, things like that. In some ways, this reminds me of that. I think it has the good timbre characteristics that the HD6XX has. However, it's not dark or warm in the same sense that the 6XX is. It does feel like it has a hair of warmth to it, which is interesting because it measures a little bit colder, and it definitely does have a lot more treble than the 6XX. But what you're getting instead is a very large, out-of-your-head kind of soundstage. Nothing is intimate, nothing has that sort of extreme vocal closeness that the 6XX has, but instead you get very, very good, very distant sounding soundstage, very roomy. And this passes through the whole range. These actually have soundstage in bass, which is pretty cool. Not a lot of headphones can stage in the low end well, but these actually seem to. It actually can make bass seem to have a sense of space to it, which is something that I like. They're very well extended, more than enough for my tastes. I think they ride the line of having just enough bass that I'd say they are more than flat, but not too much bass for me to say, okay, this is just a boosted mess. It has a little bit more bass than neutral, and I'm pretty happy with that. Now, this is not as neutral as something like the 560S. I still think if you are mixing and producing, the 560S should be your go-to as a reference, and it's not quite as analytical as the 560S either, but in reference of between 560S and Sundara, frequency response wise, part of the treble sits in between those two, because Sundara, while is an extremely good headphone, is a little bit of mess in the frequency response through the upper mid-range, and the treble it has a large dip, has a few weird bumps in the mid-range, and then going back up into the treble, so you get a bit of a sucked out sound, not all the times, but just a little bit with Sundara, which can give it more of a sense of space in some cases, but I feel like also holds back the timbre characteristics of the headphone and makes it sound unnecessarily harsh and cold in certain cases. Not all the time, just in certain cases. Comparatively, I am much more fond of the mid-treble frequency response of this, whereas Sundara has a bit of a dip. These just kind of ride straight through and then elevate a little bit. So the elevation does add some brightness in. That does mean that in some cases you are going to hit sibilant territory, which of course you do with the Sundara as well. You're probably going to lean more into that territory with this headphone though. But because that range is a little bit more filled out, I think that things seem to even out, and I find myself listening at a little bit lower volume with these than I did with the Sundara. Now I think detail-wise, this is pushing a little bit more detail than the 560S, and I'd say on par with, if not slightly less detail than the Sundara. So it's a little bit hard to say there. I feel like the Sundara was a hair more detail than these, edging them out just so slightly, but it could be the treble peak in the Sundara, so it's hard to say which way that goes. It could be the treble peak, it could be a hair more detail. Either way, out of the two, I do actually prefer this headphone, both comfort and sound signature wise. I do, however, think the Sundara would probably scale better on very expensive amplification. This is the headphone, though, out of the two that would make its way into my collection. So let's talk a little bit more about that Soundstage. With a lot of songs, orchestral, acoustic, even hip-hop, like I said, I'm getting bass staging. And in many ways, the Soundstage of this reminds me of the Hifiman Edition XX. In fact, a few sound characteristics of this do. More the positives than the negatives. It seems this does all the positive things that the Edition XX did, without its downsides, which I think is definitely a step in the right direction. Between the two, I much prefer this headphone. I think it's more capable, resolution-wise, and definitely more pleasing frequency response-wise. And actually more comfortable as well. I feel like the weight is more evenly distributed on this, even though it has smaller pads than the Edition XX. Now, as far as power goes, I think something like an L30 would drive this fine. I did very much enjoy it on the A90 single-ended. I did not need to ever put it past medium gain single-ended, so you do not need to run this balance, you do not need to run it on a big amp. Something like the Little Dot Mark II here, this is an OTL tube amp, and the impedance of these don't really match well, so I could never get the Little Dot Mark II past half volume before the amp would start distorting, but a little under half volume on the Little Dot Mark II, this actually did pretty interesting things. Because this is an OTL amp, it did kind of sloppy up the sound a little bit. It made it a little bit more laid back, a little bit less aggressive, but it continued to play off the already large soundstage in this, and kind of added to it a little bit, making the soundstage even larger and a bit more relaxed and a bit more airy. I would say this is a headphone that's very good at being spacious and airy, which is why this is definitely going to make it into my favorites, especially for 2020. So my big recommendations this year so far have been, if you're gaming, PC38X. If you want something that's going to image extremely well and have a little bit of a V-shaped sound, there is the Tiger 300R. Of course, the 6XX as always, I recommend that. It has a narrow sound signature, very intimate vocals, a bit warm, not too extended in the bass and treble. And then if you want something that is just a straight reference sound signature for analytical listening or for mixing, it is the HD560S. And then this fills the gap perfectly for a headphone I can recommend to people that has a very big stage, is very comfortable, just a spacious, airy, resolving, good planar at a budget. Now this headphone, I want to say it's around $220. Planars like this would not have been around a handful of years ago. We had things like the HE-400i, we had the M1060, we had the T50RP, things like that. And the M1060 was, at its time, it wasn't the best headphone. It had its flaws, but at its time, that was pretty incredible to have a planar, a large planar, other than just the HE-400i at that price point. It was around, I want to say, $300 or under $300. And now, headphones like this are becoming more common. Things that are in the $200, $220 range that are a large planar, that's very detailed, especially for its price, that are capable of soundstage, that are comfortable, that really check all the boxes. Had this been out 3 years ago, this would have been revolutionary. Today, it's not revolutionary, but it is still very competitive. And this is actually why I don't see really any point in the Civica Phoenix being around, because this, to me, gets the good timbre that I could get from like a 6XX, maybe not quite as good in the vocal range. Excellent soundstage, very enjoyable. It checks all of those boxes. Now, I don't think this is a direct successor to an HE-500, and the reason being because I think that this improves upon things that the HE-500 couldn't quite do. The signatures don't remind me of one another, and there's another headphone like this already on the market, and that headphone is the wired Hifiman Diva. They are about the same price. You can get the Diva on Amazon. It ends up that the driver specs are identical, the pads are identical, and the frequency response is identical, give or take a decibel or two. It seems extremely likely that what we are looking at is a Hifiman Diva that is being used with a different headband and is in all black with dual entry on the bottom. Now, I'm referring to the wired Hifiman Diva, by the way, not the wireless one. Now, the wired Diva is single entry, where this is dual entry. I contacted Drop about this because I want to know what they thought about it, and they actually said that they did not know of this headphone being very similar to the Diva, and they were going to talk to Hifiman. So that's all I've heard on that front. If it is the same headphone as the Diva, it would be something that Hifiman has done. So I don't necessarily feel comfortable saying that this is truly an HE-500, but that said, I am not at all disappointed by that, and I'm very happy with the headphone that this is. And that's good news for you guys, because if you don't want to get this headphone on Drop, which I like having dual entry, I like having the all black, I think this is a nice headband, but if you didn't want to get the HE-5XX, you could just get the wired Diva. So I will actually have both of these linked in the video description. I actually don't have affiliate links for Drop products. I do have affiliate links for Amazon products, but with that said, I have not been paid or compensated in any way to say anything in this review. All the thoughts and opinions in here are my own. And that's pretty much it. This is one more headphone that I'm going to be highly recommending this year. I am going to be adding it to my collection. I'm going to ask Drop if I can purchase this, because I would like to hang on to it. I very much like it. And I've been using it. It's a headphone that I find myself using quite a bit throughout the week. I come home, I've left it sitting at this desk, I just plug up to this amp, and I listen to music for a little while to mellow out and end my day. Just realized I had that light turned off for the entire video. It's gonna look a little bit dark. Anyway, that is my review of the Hifiman HE-5XX. The conclusion is, not perfect. You're not going to get vocal intimacy with this, but you are going to get great soundstage, great bass extension. I like the tuning of it, like the comfort of it. You will hit sibilance sometimes, but I think this is a good headphone at its budget for someone who wants a nice, airy, and relaxed sound with a little bit more treble forwardness than things like the 6XX. And it gets my recommendation as well as the wired Diva. So, that's all I have for you guys today. If you like this video, please leave a like down below, a comment letting me know what you want to see in the future. If you want to get active in the community, you can at forum.hifiguides.com. And as always, don't forget to stick around and subscribe for more videos like this in the future. Until next one, guys. Peace.